AITA for wanting nothing to do with my mother-in-law after years of her interfering in my marriage. I 32F have been married to my husband Tom, 34M for 4 years and together for 7. His mother, Linda, 62F, has been a constant source of stress since the day I met her. The problem is that none of her behavior, taken individually, seems bad enough to justify cutting her off. It's always little things, tiny things, things that make you sound crazy if you complain about them. But after years of it, I honestly don't know if I'm overreacting anymore. When Tom and I first started dating, Linda would constantly insert herself into everything. If Tom mentioned we were going out for dinner, she'd somehow end up joining us. If we planned a weekend away, she'd call repeatedly asking where we were staying, what we'd be doing, and whether we'd considered visiting somewhere she liked. She would call Tom every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. If he didn't answer within an hour, she'd start calling me. At first I tried to be understanding because they were close, but over time it started feeling like there were 3 people in the relationship. When Tom and I moved in together, Linda somehow got involved in every decision. She didn't like our sofa. She thought our bedroom color was depressing. She told me my choice of curtains looked cheap. Whenever she visited, she'd walk around the house making comments like she was conducting an inspection. One time I came home from work and found that she'd rearranged my kitchen cabinets because she thought my organization system didn't make sense. Tom thought it was funny. I didn't. Things got worse after we got engaged. Linda somehow knew information about wedding plans before I'd even discussed them with Tom. It turned out he was telling her everything. She repeatedly suggested I wear a different dress because she didn't like the one I'd chosen. She complained about the venue. She complained about the food. She complained about the guest list. At one point, she actually told me that if she'd been consulted, she could have helped me make better choices. I bit my tongue because I didn't want family drama before the wedding. Then came the unannounced visits. Linda lived about 20 minutes away and started dropping by randomly. I'd be working from home and hear knocking at the door. She'd be standing there holding a casserole dish and saying she was just in the area. Sometimes she'd stay for 3 hours. Once she let herself into our back garden while I was sunbathing because she wanted to show me a plant she'd bought. I asked Tom to talk to her about boundaries. He did, but nothing changed. Then there were the gifts. Every birthday and Christmas, she'd buy things specifically for Tom but address them to both of us. For me, she'd usually buy things she'd previously criticized me for not owning. She once gave me a cookbook after telling everyone at dinner that I wasn't much of a cook. Another year, she bought me anti-aging skincare products and said, "It's never too early to start." Everyone laughed. I didn't. The incident that really started changing how I viewed her happened 2 years ago. Tom and I went on a 2-week holiday in Greece. We had a cat and some plants, so we gave Linda a spare key so she could check on everything every few days. When we got home, things felt off. Nothing major, just strange. A blanket was folded differently. Items on shelves had moved. A couple of drawers weren't how I'd left them. I mentioned it to Tom, who said I was imagining things. A few weeks later, I was looking for an important document and found it in a completely different drawer from where I'd stored it. Again, Tom dismissed it. Months passed. Then one afternoon, I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. I walked into my living room and found Linda there, completely alone. She looked startled. I looked even more startled. I asked what she was doing. She said she was just checking in on the house. I reminded her that neither of us had asked her to do that. That's when she admitted she had made a copy of the spare key, without telling us. Apparently she'd done it while we were on holiday because she thought it was sensible to have a backup. She'd been letting herself into our house whenever she felt like it. Not every day, not every week, but often enough that she'd become comfortable doing it. I was furious. Tom was angry too, although nowhere near as angry as I was. Linda didn't seem to understand why this was a problem. She kept saying she was helping. Helping with what? Nothing was wrong. Nobody had asked for help. After a huge argument, she reluctantly returned the copied key, or at least she claimed she did. I wanted the locks changed immediately. Tom thought that was excessive. Eventually we changed them anyway. For a while things calmed down. Then last year I got pregnant. That's when everything exploded. Linda suddenly had opinions about everything. My diet, my doctor, the baby's name, the nursery, the pram, the cot, the feeding plan, the birth plan, literally everything. If I disagreed with her, she'd tell me I was making a mistake. If Tom agreed with me, she'd tell him he was being manipulated. She started referring to the baby as my baby. I hated it. After our daughter was born, things somehow became even worse. Linda expected unlimited access. She'd call asking if she could visit, and then show up even after being told no. She'd take photos and post them online before we had. She'd hand the baby back only when she felt like it. She'd wake a sleeping baby because she wanted cuddles. One day I walked into the nursery and found her feeding my daughter a food we'd specifically asked everyone not to give her yet. When I confronted her, she told me she'd raised children and knew what she was doing. I finally snapped. I told her that being a grandmother didn't make her a third parent. The argument was massive. She cried. Tom's siblings got involved. Suddenly, I was being painted as the controlling wife keeping a grandmother away from her grandchild. The final straw happened 3 months ago. My daughter had her first birthday party. We planned a small family gathering. Without asking us, Linda invited 8 additional relatives. 8 people we hadn't prepared for, people we barely knew. When I confronted her, she said she assumed it wouldn't matter because family should be welcome. That was it. After years of comments, criticism, boundary violations, surprise visits, copying our key, undermining my parenting, and generally treating our marriage like a group project, I told Tom I was done. I said I would remain polite at necessary family events, but I no longer wanted a personal relationship with his mother. I didn't want her visiting our home. I didn't want private conversations with her. I didn't want to spend holidays with her unless absolutely necessary. Tom thinks I'm being too harsh. He agrees she's difficult, but says she's family and means well. His siblings think I'm holding grudges. Meanwhile, I feel like I've spent 7 years having my boundaries ignored. So AITA for wanting nothing to do with my mother-in-law anymore. Update. First, thank you to everyone who commented. I genuinely wasn't expecting such a huge response. A lot of people pointed out that while my Mills behavior was a problem, my husband was also part of the issue because he constantly downplayed it. Reading thousands of comments saying essentially the same thing forced me to take a hard look at our marriage. A week after making my post, Tom and I had a long conversation. For the first time, I laid out every incident from the past 7 years, not just the big ones, everything, the key copy, the unannounced visits, the criticism, the social media posts, the parenting interference, the birthday party, everything. I think seeing it all listed together finally made something click. Tom admitted that he'd spent years making excuses because he was used to his mother's behavior. To him, it was normal. To everyone else, it wasn't. He agreed to start setting actual boundaries. Well, apparently Linda didn't take that very well. 2 weeks later, we discovered something that changed everything. Our neighbor knocked on our door while Tom was at work. She casually mentioned seeing Linda entering our house the previous month while we were out. The problem? Neither of us had given her a key. Tom and I were confused. Then we checked our doorbell camera history. Sure enough, there were multiple occasions where Linda had entered the house while we weren't home. I honestly felt sick. After the previous key incident, we'd changed the locks. We thought that was the end of it. Apparently not. It turned out that shortly after our daughter was born, Tom had briefly given Linda a key so she could help during a particularly difficult week. He completely forgot about it afterwards. Linda had quietly made another copy. Again, without permission. Again, Tom was livid. This time there were no excuses. No, she means well. No, that's just how she is. He called her immediately and put her on speakerphone. When confronted, she admitted she'd copied the key. Her justification? She wanted access in case of emergencies. When Tom pointed out that no emergency had occurred in over a year, she admitted she'd occasionally gone into the house to help. Help meant reorganizing cupboards, tidying rooms, checking supplies, looking through the nursery, making notes about things she thought we needed to buy. I wish I was joking. Tom asked whether she'd entered our bedroom. She said yes. He asked whether she'd gone through drawers. After a long silence, she admitted she had. At that point, I was shaking with anger. Tom told her she would no longer have a key, would no longer be allowed unsupervised access to our daughter, and would not be visiting for the foreseeable future. She cried. She accused me of turning him against her. She accused me of breaking up the family. Then she hung up. Since then, we've changed the locks again. We've installed additional security cameras. And, perhaps most importantly, Tom has started therapy. For the first time in our relationship, I feel like he actually understands how serious this has been. Most of his siblings initially sided with Linda. That changed after they learned about the second copied key. Apparently even they couldn't defend that. We've had several apologies from relatives who previously thought I was exaggerating. As for Linda, we haven't spoken in nearly 2 months. Tom has had limited contact. She still refuses to acknowledge that what she did was wrong. She insists she was only helping. The difference is that nobody is accepting that excuse anymore. So, for everyone who asked, no, I didn't reconcile with my mill. No, she doesn't have a key. And no, she won't be getting one ever again. For the first time in years, our home actually feels like our home.